What is something, Victoria, that you've been excited about, obsessing over, or maybe just talking a little bit too loud about? Does anything come to your mind?
Yes, it's messaging, mostly for B2B SaaS companies, but not from the perspective of wording or writing the copy, but mostly from a more holistic perspective and identifying all the tiny little aspects and factors that actually impact messaging. Like, for example, how team communication impacts messaging. So yeah, I'm kind of in this reflection for a while, and every single week I'm refining my perspective because thanks to amazing founders I'm working with, I discover new things every single day. So I may be changing some opinions and some perspectives, but yeah, I'm in this reflection right now.
Making the complex simple and digestible. That's what Victoria is really good at. I connected with her over 4 years on LinkedIn, and she was the second episode of this podcast, which is really cool that she gave me a chance. And since then, I've learned so much from her on content and now messaging and positioning. In this episode, Victoria and I touch on why she's obsessed with messaging for SaaS companies, the strategy behind her personal website, her content distribution strategy, her favorite author who I had never heard of and was glad to learn of, and the potential of Web3, which we're both unsure about but had fun kicking the can around on that. Again, Victoria is from Season 1, Episode 2 of On Marketing. This is Episode 4 of Friends of On Marketing, recorded on November 21st, 2024. This is a show where I bring friends, guests of On Marketing, back on to talk anything. Emphasis on the anything. I want it to get weird. Thank you for being here, and make sure to follow and support my friends. Their work is important, and so is yours. So reach out if you ever wanted to talk marketing, and maybe you'll get a future Friends episode. Speaking of On Marketing, next week's episode is number 59 with Katie Severance, where she shares marketing's job is to disseminate, hate that word, the brand's message to potential prospects and customers, and the purpose of life is to have a well-lived life across all aspects, personal, professional, and everything in between. Before we get back to our conversation today, let's get this out of the way. All opinions shared in the podcast are the individual views of the host and guests, friends, not those of their employers or associated organizations. This content is intended for informational purposes and should not be considered professional marketing or life guidance. Listeners act on the information provided at their own risk. Thank you again for being here. And how long have you been, were you in this kind of messaging, this space, even when we talked a few years ago, or is this obsession kind of gotten a little bit more of an obsession just recently?
When we talked, I was focused on content marketing, and I was working with SaaS companies on their content marketing strategy. Then lots of things happened. Meanwhile, so many years have passed since our last conversation. And I've been testing different roles in different SaaS companies. At the same time, I was observing what's not working. And based on that, I started a reflection. And yeah, here I am, obsessed with messaging. I started this reflection 2 years ago, but only now I actually managed to articulate it for myself and test it with other founders and see how it works.
Yeah, I would say from the outside in, looking in, the way that you approach it is very developed. Like the way that you talk about taxonomy, I didn't even think of using that word or thinking in those terms. Was there anybody, any process, any theory, any model that kind of got you started in this direction or kind of provided maybe a very unique way or a different way to look at messaging?
I started to go deep into system thinking as a theory, as a concept, because nowadays we are confronted by complexity wherever we're looking at. We don't even realize the tiny little details that are affecting some realities, some aspects of our life, of our work. But understanding system thinking and understanding how different elements interact with each other and how they influence each other may help us understand some phenomena and maybe take some actions. Because what I noticed is that we tend to have a very black and white thinking, but there are so many nuances that actually have a huge impact on everything. And messaging is one of them, because messaging can be influenced by team communication, by how the software is structured, by how the product team thought about creating the software, by the user's experience, by everything. And if you think that there are so many teams inside the company that are communicating with people. You have the marketing team communicating with website visitors, with leads. You have the sales team communicating with prospects. You have the customer support and customer success teams that are communicating with paying customers. And if you don't align these teams internally, and if truth from the founder to executives doesn't travel fast enough, the messaging will be messed up. So it's an entire whole infrastructure. And I'm building my ideas and my frameworks based on this complexity.
Complexity. I don't hear that word a ton. I hear pain points. I hear like a lot of different words in marketing. How, like, as you're talking, makes sense. Yeah, very complex, and almost the ability to make simplicity out of the complex, or trying to derive something from the, but like, how did you get that insight, that complexity? Like, it seems like you run towards complexity while most people don't like complexity.
I start thinking about myself as a consumer, right? I do like reading dense books, but sometimes, I find it difficult. Not sometimes, I find it almost always difficult to go through articles, through website copy, I would rather watch something fun on YouTube than read the copy. So I realized actually that in their biggest majority, SaaS leads, prospects, and users are knowledge workers. And the data shows that knowledge workers suffer from cognitive fatigue, which happens because of information overload and communication burnout. And there are statistics and numbers that prove this. So you have this on one side. This means that you already will lose the interest of people if you don't make your messages clear. And by making your messages clear, I mean transforming your software into a clear concept on the website and in your sales scripts, or at whatever interaction point you have with the users. This is something we have on one side. On the other side, you asked me why I'm running towards complexity. Because I have to deal with complexity. For example, now I have an amazing project with a founder. He has an all-in-one platform for white label Forex brokerage. Like this, when I started, I was a little bit overwhelmed because it's a completely new territory. But the software is so complex and it has so many modules and so many aspects, but it's so important to simplify all these aspects for the people to see you. And I'll tell you why. Because what I noticed is that usually RevOps and MarTech SaaS companies, they nailed the messaging, because SaaS companies that are selling software for sales teams, for marketing teams, for customer success teams, they are already in the industry and they know how SaaS works and they know how messaging works. But if you go to RegTech, FinTech, risk assessment tech, there's a lack of this type of expertise, like how to simplify their incredibly important and complex software into clear messages. And for example, when I analyzed the competition of this founder I'm working with, I noticed that the majority is using jargon, complex language, and the product doesn't make sense. So in these specific industries, simplifying is a differentiator. Maybe simplifying is not a differentiator in MarTech or SaaS for sales, or because they already do that, they know how to do that. But you have so many other industries where with SaaS companies that have, with professionals that are doing their best, but maybe they lack this expertise in simplifying this complexity. So more or less, like I mapped out all this panorama and I'm trying to navigate and see what's this all about.
I love how you point that out, of that some industries or some places have kind of figured this out because they understand it well. They're selling to themselves, marketing to themselves. It almost seems, though, that the marketer's strength is an ability to go into the complex and pull out that simplicity. How do you, I mean, obviously it's a skill that's gained over time and its ability to think. what would you recommend to some young marketer or someone who's like, okay, Victoria, I get that running towards the complex to turn that into simplicity usually can be a differentiator in certain industries, but is also just a good thing in general. Where do I start? What do I not do that maybe I'm doing that's getting in the way? Does any kind of quick, high-level advice come for how to gain a skill of going into the complex and pulling simplicity out or working with others to collaborate and pull it out?
It's quite simple, actually. Put yourself in the user's shoes. Actually, imagine that you're the user. Sit in front of the computer. Imagine the workflow. Imagine a day in a life of a user. Imagine that this software is something that they will be using for 3 hours per day. For what exactly? And what their workflow will be. And what the stages will be. And how can you arrange the software around these specific stages? I mean, try to match the mental workflow and the mental maps of users. But you can have the data because you have user research, you have product marketers that can help with that. I mean, it's a teamwork. But yeah, the main answer is this. Try it yourself, do it yourself.
Empathy is kind of the word that maybe was starting to bubble in my head, of putting yourself in their shoes to really, what would I react to this copy? Does this make sense to me? Yeah, that's a good place to start for sure. I like that. And then to your point, data or talking to sales, talking to people in the company just to gain more insight. I think that makes a lot of sense. Well, Victoria, I want to take it away from this, but still kind of in this realm, but more focus on you and what you're doing at the SaaS Minds. Your website, I think, is literally like preaching what you're practicing what you're preaching here, where after going through your website, maybe how you offered it before was complex, but it makes so much sense to me. The pricing's all there. Talk me through how you built your website. Obviously, it probably wasn't maybe right away, or it was a journey, but did you apply some of these similar things of Victoria can be kind of complex in the way I deliver, so how can I make it simple? Or did it just come intuitively to you because you think this way all the time?
It took me 2 years, and this website will be changed because I still see it too complex and I still see it too confusing. So it will be changed. Yeah, it took me time, but it didn't take me time to create the website. It took me a lot of time to understand more or less what's the need on the market. And this happened only the moment when I started to work with an amazing founder from Hong Kong on his software. And thanks to him, I actually managed to understand where my help is needed. And I test drive the copy with him. Okay, you're the founder. Tell me, what are the bad parts about this? What are your objections? Yeah, no, it took me a while. Yeah, I was changing something. Even my parents, even my mother was asking me. I was showing her versions, and she was like, "But this is the last one, right? That's it. You're not changing it anymore." So, no, I don't know. We'll see.
Oh, I love that. So maybe something I'm pulling out is kind of this consistent or constant iteration optimization. You're constantly trying to make what you think was simple, still seemingly a little complex, making it more simple, more simplistic overall. That's interesting. I guess a question I had was, and this is kind of a high-level marketing question that has been put out a lot, but the pricing. You clearly put the pricing out there. There's no hidden, maybe there's hidden, but it's very clear of okay, this is the one time, no hidden cost. What was your reasoning for that? Was that just always your model of just put the pricing up, transparency in that state, or why did you do that for yourself?
100% transparency. I don't have to. When I have a call with someone who is truly interested in my services, they know what's the pricing. I don't have to hide something or try to convince them about the value. Everything is out there, and it saves me time and it saves them time. So I don't see any reason to hide the pricing. I'm not a person who is against practices, but I don't like when pricing is hidden. I don't find it a good practice, a good messaging practice. Of course, if you have add-ons, or if you after that you see that you can add more value, you can agree upon an ongoing contract collaboration, obviously. But this first, the entry point should be very clear.
think as well, when I've been trying to steel man, like why you might not put the pricing on, I don't get a ton of answers. It's hard to kind of steel man why. Same with different gated content, for example, but there is like if you put tons of hours into it and you maybe spent dollars, maybe gate it. But I'm totally with you. Another question that's similar in this transparency vein is your process. Now, it's not like, maybe super in depth, but it's decently in depth. You're telling kind of what you're going to do. I could come on there as a competitor and steal. Like, I'm only hearing that from like someone, if I suggested they put their full process on. How did you get to that? Was that a no-brainer for you? The same transparency idea just to show like the
yes,
process?
Yes, exactly. It's the same idea. Actually, my father asked me this question. Like, how? Why? First of all, okay, so I'm not selling only the framework. I'm selling the experience of working with me, of collaborating. We are engaging, we are having conversations, we are going back and forth with ideas. It's not a strict framework because I'm always adjusting according to the type of product. It's one thing to work with a product that has a very clear module. It's another thing to work with a product that has 70 dashboards that are part of different modules is completely different. The same is with the type of industry, the type of user. Maybe the founder has some great ideas. I mean, today actually I was commenting about that on LinkedIn, that when I started, I saw messaging experts as prescriptive. Like, this is the expert. They come to you, they tell you what to do. Now, by working with other founders, I realized that it's actually a collaboration. My job is to enable founders to think differently, better, simpler about their product, and together to create the messaging. Obviously, I take care of the part of creating the copy, the frameworks, everything. But I'm in this process to help the founder to think about their product in a different way, in a way that makes sense for their users. So I am an enabler. I'm not someone who comes and tells you, do that, or otherwise it's not going to work.
I like how you said that you're not selling the framework. There's bits of your thinking, experience, all those things that bleed into it. That makes so much sense. I'm all for process too, but I know that that's something that sometimes it's like, why would we put that up there? So I found it super cool to see kind of you executing on a lot of these things on your website, even if it needs to get updated. I had a final question just on your website. It's kind of a little bit of a larger question, but you seem to have nailed this kind of redistribution strategy. I didn't really catch on to it until I went to your website of you're putting these things on LinkedIn, these to me very high value piece of content. I always was like, wow, I wonder like how long that takes and if that just goes kind of to the graveyard after. But you have these kind of 1 minute frameworks and you have this kind of theory SaaS like 101 messaging. How did you get to that? I'm going to guess it was trial and error, or was it kind of obvious of like, I'll put on LinkedIn, put on the website so it lives forever? Or what was your approach to that?
I wasn't sure how to do that. And I tried different content types, different content formats, and nothing felt right because I'm a kind of a weirdo that goes also by intuition and what feels right for me, and it feels authentic. And at some point I said, okay, let's go full in on LinkedIn, because at the end of the day, I don't know how many years I may need to get traffic to my website. I need to be on LinkedIn where actually my people live and work. And at the same time, why not create like a collection on my website just to have it there, like without any intention to drive traffic or to, it's just like a repository. So yeah,
I love that.
It wasn't nothing, like no strategy or big thinking behind this decision.
Oh, you could have lied, Victoria, and I would have bought it. I mean, it's from somebody who, I wouldn't call myself a distribution strategist, but it's something I think a lot about. And to be honest, I would have no critiques on the way that you're doing it. It's kind of that flawless delivery of everybody feels like if I only went to your website, it feels genuine as well, rather than like it's some like embedded LinkedIn post. It's just so really well done. So I wanted to kind of to see, was there somebody, or kind of as you just talked about, you kind of worked through, tried to find what felt good, which I think is important, like with content creating, is doing something you also enjoy and not just like dreading every day, whatever it is. If it's videos you hate, it's like, don't make videos on, do writing or do photos. So I feel like you've done that well, and I wanted to ask a question to kind of give you a compliment, because I can't be seen just giving compliments for free. I'm just kidding. But another question I had, and this is on your website, but it's not about your website. How did you get to enjoying, I'm not even going to take the stab at his name, Carl Avi Kensingard, the author. How did you find him? Like, I've never heard of him, but he seems to be well liked.
Like Karl Knausgaard,
Okay.
Reading his fifth book.
Okay.
Yeah.
Tell me about it. Did you start early with him? When was your first interaction or time even knowing about Carl?
I think I discovered his books on social media. Someone posted, an avid reader posted about his books. He published back in the day like the first and the second book, and I said, okay, let me give it a try. And I read the first book, and it really impressed me. It's an autobiography. It's beautifully written, and I read the first book in 2017, I think. So now I'm at the fifth volume. I have the sixth, and that's it. It's the whole saga ends. Yeah, it's a Norwegian author.
Author. Okay. And it's just a biography. So it's like about his life or about his struggle. I mean, my struggle.
Yeah, it's his infancy, his adolescence, teenage years. Yeah. His adulthood.
What would be the way you recommend that to someone? Like, what would somebody be thinking about going through that you're like, this book, this author will resonate or do well with you? Or maybe even someone from a certain part of the world. When's the last time you recommended them, or is it kind of a secret that you don't want many people to know because such a good author that you just want it all to yourself?
I love sharing things I love, but the only person to whom I recommended this book, and actually I bought him the books, is my father. And he struggles reading them still. He's at the second book. But it's a different type of writing because it's not an action-based. It's slow. It's very slow. It's the thinking process, the slow events that are happening. It's like Marcel Proust, but a contemporary version of Marcel Proust. So yeah, I don't tend to recommend it too often because maybe some people may not have the patience to go with this pace. But I didn't spare my father. I said, you have to read that.
Well, Victoria, I have one more topic that could be kind of a big topic because I don't have a ton of insight into it. I'm trying to learn more. But you talk on your About Me kind of being interested in potential of Web3. Mm-hmm. Obviously, I'm aware of it. You can see I have the Read, Write, Own book. So I'm like, I grasp, okay, 1 was read, 2 was this, and 3 is kind of own. What excites you most about Web3, or what maybe that's current that excites you of like a potential for the use of it? Or I'm like you, but I would love to hear what you're excited about for Web3.
Okay, so 1 second.
No way.
Of course I had to pull a book. I didn't read it yet, but it's Read, Write, Own. Yeah. And it's about Web3. And from what I understand, because I'm not an expert, I have no clue. It's something that I'm interested in, and whenever I have the chance, I learn about. Web3 will allow us to own digital assets. From what I understand, this is one of the pillars of Web3. And I don't know how this will happen, and how probably based on the same technology that NFT was created, because those little JPEGs, maybe they suck, but the technology behind those little JPEGs, it's actually quite interesting and quite it has a quite big potential. So yeah, I can't say much about Web3, only the fact that from what I understand, it's still something in the stage of envisioning and building. But I think in the next 20, 30 years, it will it will change the internet the way we know it today. So I'm quite excited to see what will happen.
Yeah, I'm similar in that kind of bullish stance towards it. even for my own podcast, I've started to just tinker with that idea. Like, what would ownership, what would, then people could vote maybe on, hey, 5 guests, which one of these guests do you want to see on the next episode? And for me, it starts to, at least from a little bit of that book that I read, and it was months ago, so it kind of escaping me, but it's essentially like social media has a high take rate, which means that they take a good amount of your, like, whether it's money, attention, all that, yes. Where it's like, that shouldn't be, though, if you like start to think about it. It's like, why? Because Facebook only got rich because of the creators, but now they're able to like turn the table on them. And that was like the one thing that like really made sense of like, ooh, I would love to see a Web3 social media is something where it's like you actually can have relationships without this intermediary, Facebook, LinkedIn, or whatever, choosing the rules, choosing who gets what, or all that. And I think that because again, it goes back to like documentation or having like rules documented, which like I think it's something you just brought up that's been around forever. So it's like, why not have this in the digital realm of like a documentation of how something's to work, and then having ownership to a photo, all those things. It makes so much sense to me. And I'm glad you're also on it, because I think like minimally what my advice is like to other marketers is like, just learn. Like, because
exactly.
as we're even talking, we don't know either, but it's like, if you're not jumping into it, you'll be kind of behind. I'm similar with internet or all these things, the longer you take to kind of start. What are your thoughts then about AI? Totally different than Web3, but similar on a hype train. Do you see AI being kind of big? We had a little LinkedIn commenting back and forth about using AI with content writing in specific, but just in large with marketing. Do you see AI being a big shift, or do you see it being kind of a smaller adaptation that marketers need to learn, but it's not going to like reinvent the way marketers do their job?
I think it's still early to understand the real impact of AI. You know that when Roman Empire disappeared, I mean, it ended, people realized it only after 50 or 60 years. That's it. It died. The same with AI. I think at the moment, it's something that can be very helpful as a co-pilot. I don't think at the moment can replace a human, because you still need the human eye on everything, and the human taste, and the human, I mean, I joke saying that until AI can't go to the groceries to buy milk or have and take care of a cat, it won't replace my job. If this happens, okay, yeah, I'm defeated. Oh. But until then, no. But why I'm saying that, because we as humans, we like to relate to other humans. But what makes us relate to other humans is the experiences other humans have. Humane experiences, like the fact of going out and drinking and buying milk at the store. So until AI doesn't have this human experience, I think it will miss this relatability in what it creates. Maybe it can fake it, but if you say that it's faked, will you still enjoy it? As a matter of fact, I was talking today with a friend. She's studying to become a tattoo artist. And I was telling her that I read somewhere that tattoo artists won't be replaced by AI. And she was saying, yeah, but AI can so easily generate images for tattoo. And I asked her, would you have a tattoo made, an image, a painting made by AI tattooed on your body? And she was like, no, I don't want something that was created and envisioned by AI to be tattooed on my body. Maybe some people won't, but I think that still at this point in our history, people will say, no, I want a pictogram, a graphic, a painting, a drawing created by a human. So I think it's still early to understand the impact. We can see more or less where we're going, but we don't know yet. So.
Well, that's a really well answer. I think sometimes it's hard to not let the hype train take you too far without, to your point of some of your thinking of the life moments, that is a huge part of doing good marketing, writing, all these things, is you just have these random occurrences, random things that an AI can find in a large language model can't experience. So it's not relatable or all those things. I totally love that. And maybe you haven't used it outside of, but is there any unique way you've used AI that you found that was kind of interesting? I didn't think it would do a good output from this, or using it as a counselor, I've used that. But what for you have you found AI to be unique? use cases?
Maybe it's not unique, but it opened my eyes to what I can do with AI. I told you that I'm working with a founder and helping him with all-in-one software for white label brokerage, forex brokerage. When I started, I didn't even know what forex is. But thanks to Perplexity, it took me half a day, not only to understand who are the stakeholders, who are the players, what are the financial trading rules, what type of actions these type of platforms are covering in the logistical chain. It mapped out everything for me simply by asking questions. And the good thing about Perplexity is that you're asking a question and it gives you other questions that may help you in your learning process. And I think that normally with Google, this would take me 1 week. With Perplexity, it took me half a day. And after that, I took all this knowledge, I put it, based on this knowledge, I created some assets for the founder. And I told you that, I told him that I am in this learning process, and he confirmed everything. I mean, my understandings were correct. And this confirmed that, okay, I understood at least the surface of the industry and what a software like this can do. So I can work with that. Like I at least at the surface, it helped me understand. And that was huge because it's an impressive industry that takes a lot of time to actually understand what's all about. Yeah. How about you?
I think that's well, I kind of led into it. I've used it just to work through life experiences. It's kind of weird because even to your point of it's never had life experiences, but whether it's a work struggle or just my upcoming child, to just be hey, can you act as a therapist and just work through some of these questions? So it's almost not similar, but similar. I'm trying to learn through it. So you use it to learn the trade that very well. I'm almost using it to learn different things that could happen with either being a parent or all these things, to just be aware of them. But I really think a marketer's job, back to how you used it, is to, again, unless you're marketing to marketers or selling to salespeople, it's going to be an industry, something you don't know about. So it's sure, you could spend, your point, a week. You could go to the library. I mean, if we were going to go back in time, right, it would be the library, go grab some books. Now it's you can internet search it, but now a step further is using any of these Perplexity. And even then, they give you sources. So it just speeds up that process, that then you can go deeper if you need to click a source or to find out more on something. I find that to be a skill that I have preached of get better at doing that quickly, but maybe you don't need to get better at doing it quickly. You just need to work with a machine to get you the information, download it and understand it. Because and I think it's an intern. I always think of AI as intern, not that the intern would learn that, but you might give that task to an intern. Hey, get me tons of resources on this industry so I can learn. And now you can just use a robot versus pestering a human to do it. So I find how you think about it's very critical, at least what I'm pulling out of your answer.
Or summarize stuff, or what. Now, recently, another use case I discovered is to use AI to give me objections. For example, I wrote the copy of a page, or I wrote a post or an article, and I upload it to AI and say, okay, give me objections. What's wrong with it? Identify everything that people can object on, and then we have back and forth arguments, because I argue with my AI. I don't know how others. I like to argue and defend my position, and then AI is generating answers, something now after thinking and hearing your argument, I understand your point. It's yeah, okay, I won the argument. Yeah, I have fun with it.
Yeah, I find myself debating. I would use maybe that word, right? Debating, but also, arguing sometimes. I found that you almost have to be delicate, because you can almost argue it into your viewpoint, which is, I don't know if that's true of it's just too nice. It's Midwest nice AI, and it's just yeah, you're right. Now that you've said, but I've used that similarly, because I think too many times we can get subjective about our own work or even a friend's work, where to just have an objective force to look at it and say when did you get bored reading this as this ICP? Because there's obviously always that context piece of read this as this person with these pains, jobs, and gains. explains all of it, where then it's like they're able to more speak of like, you lost me at paragraph 2, add more supporting points here, all of that. And that's so crucial, because that would be like an editor or somebody that you would have to use for that. But now you can almost be a super marketer and do some of this within your own loop with AI, talking back and forth to it, like you mentioned. Oh, that's good.
Yeah. Mostly on ideas, like, and on the logic of the narrative, because sometimes you get so into the topic that you don't realize that your arguments are misplaced or they don't follow the natural logic, and it helps you to reorganize in a way that makes sense. Yeah, usually when I write, I have to leave what I wrote for a few days and to come back to it, to read it again, and then realize, oh my God, I made it so awful, I have to change and rewrite everything. And this is a never-ending cycle.
No, I think we're totally in alignment that the AI is best not for the writing, or to help with it, but not to do said writing. But maybe that'll change as we keep moving forward with its powers and capabilities. I hope not, because I love writing, and I don't want the machine to get good enough that it can take my skill away. Well, Victoria, I do have one more question. This is a little bit sombering, but let's just imagine you have found out you're going to die tomorrow. But within this, I gave you a load sum of money to say, hey, we can put a message out on every social channel. It's kind of like in memory of Victoria. What would be that message on which you put on that ad to kind of either bring hope, bring joy, bring insight, bring something to the majority of humans who turn on their social media tomorrow and see your ad and get your message? What would be that message? What would be it, knowing I'm not going to be here for much longer, so I want to get one of my most important insights, nuggets, messages out? What is that for you?
If you have loved ones, parents or siblings, or in general friends, loved ones in general, because every person's situation is different, spend quality time with them. Even the things that maybe you'll want to argue about, at the end of the day, they don't have any meaning, and just find things that connects to them and ignore the things that make you different, because like at the end of the day, it doesn't matter.
I love that. Love connection. No, I love that message, Victoria. Well, thank you so much for coming back on to Friends of On
Thank you for
Marketing and
inviting
sharing
me.
Your wisdom. This was fun, and we'll do it hopefully not as long next time, maybe a year or two rather than 3 or 4. But thank you again.
Thank you very much.
And this is the end of the podcast. What one idea or topic of conversation stood out to you today? Write it down, share it with a friend, post it on social. The main thing is take action. That's how we go from theory to mastery. We need to practice. We need to put it into practice. Thank you for listening and being here, and I hope you tune in next week.